It has come with heartache, mudslinging, name-calling, splits, expulsions, infighting, and what some may say even call undemocratic practices, not in line with an opposition party that is supposed to stand for democracy, transparency, and trust. So, your views, briefly. What actually is the state of your party, the MDCT, today?
It must be remembered that the aim of the MDC is to take over governmental power through peaceful, democratic, and constitutional means, govern differently, and change the lives of the people of Zimbabwe for the better. That is our aim. The MDC, the state of affairs within the MDC right now is, in my respectful view, very good. After the by-elections, where we did not do well, we went back to the drawing board and we started restructuring the party. I am happy to tell you that we are 85% through with restructuring of the party. And this is critical for us as an opposition party. We want to strengthen the party as a credible change agent. We have just completed our Congress on the 18th of December 2022, at which the leadership question was put beyond doubt. Leaders were democratically elected, people voted, there were no incidents of violence at that Congress. And for the first time, the MDC has, in its presidium, 40% women. So we are ready to go. We are now on the next phase, which is to prepare for the elections. We are going to do our candidate selection, hopefully by the end of February. So we are on course.
I will get to the issues such as your Congress, of course, and violence a bit later in the show. But just very briefly, how many card-carrying members does the MDCT currently have? From the time of the split, has the party's membership risen or fallen?
Well, the figure is hard to say and with certainty because of we don't take people away from the books, maybe when they've changed political parties and other people do join. But when I was Secretary General, which is 2020, after the split, the so-called split, you call it a split, I call it an ideological rupture, because this was a division of people along ideological lines. Yeah. The figure was at 560,000, and I think that we are plus or minus that figure.
Now, Douglas, your party, of course, the MDCT, made what critics call a serious political miscalculation. I'm talking, of course, about the recall of around a total of 165 councillors spread throughout Zimbabwe and 32 legislators. This, as you said earlier, led to by-elections being held in 2022. The problem was that when these by-elections were held, your party did not retain or win a single seat and lost all of them mainly to the Triple C, which then was only a few weeks old, and of course some to the ruling party, ZANU-PF. Could this contend that the recalls were mainly due to these elected officials not declaring undying loyalty to you personally? What's your comment?
First of all, recalls are a phenomenon, a permanent phenomenon in all democracies. You find them in the United Kingdom, in the United States, in all the advanced democracies. And in Zimbabwe, it has been used. ZANU-PF has used it. Morgan Tsvangirai recalled the entire council of Chitungwiza because they had committed unpardonable offenses. And I think in 2015, Morgan Tsvangirai recalled 21 people, including Tendai Biti. And in 2018, Nelson Chamisa recalled Thokozani Kupe. And in 2020, I was not the president of the MDC. The president there was Dr. Thokozani Kupe. She recalled quite a lot of people. And when I took over, I recalled, I think, less than 5 members of parliament. Of course, we recalled a number of councillors. And so in terms of numbers, I have recalled the least number of people. So when people talk about a recall being a miscalculation,
When you're saying 32 is not the number that you personally recalled?
No, I did not personally recall them. And at any rate, it was not a personal issue. The people who were recalled not with by-elections in mind. They were recalled because the constitution of the MDC says if you support another political party, then you automatically cease to be a member of the political party. So it's not us who terminated, it is them who terminated. And they knew the operation of the constitution. All we did was to inform Parliament that so and so is no longer our member. And by-elections came, we did not perform well.
No, I want to get there because critics call it, and I quote, a humiliating defeat. I mean, you commentated that it was not yet time to write the MDC epitaph. In fact, to quote your own words, you said, we got our strategy wrong. Someone was asking, how come you got your strategy wrong? This was my answer. Lionel Messi misses a penalty, doesn't he? Diego Maradona misses a penalty, doesn't he? So strategists get strategies wrong sometimes. But I put it to you, Douglas, that this was not, as you said, missing a penalty, but more like scoring an own goal.
Certainly not, Eddie. And let me quote Mandela, if you can allow me. Mandela says, a saint is a sinner who keeps on trying. People fail sometimes. But what marks a leader and a leadership is the ability to rise from adversity. We did not do well in the by-elections. There are a lot of explanations to it. But when we were talking about it in the party, I said there is no explanation for failure. This failure is behind us. We must pick the pieces. We must go back to the drawing board. And I am very happy that the MDC is the most active political entity in this country. We are the only political party that has held its Congress. And we have picked ourselves up. We are still standing. But if you look at many of these people, many of these leaders, they have failed at one point in time. Abdoulaye Wade in Senegal, he failed, I think, on 5 occasions. President Hichilema Hikainde, he failed many times. President Emerson Mnangagwa lost parliamentary elections, I think twice, to someone who was virtually not known. And he is right now sitting in the State House. Now, the mentality we have in the MDC is that we can rise from adversity. And our critics, our colleagues within the opposition, think that winning a by-election is winning everything. Well, I want to remind them of what the chess champion Garry Kasparov said, the burden of past victory. That is a past defeat. We have learned our lessons. It did not come because we committed anything, any offense at all. It was not a strategic issue. It was a legal issue. We found ourselves in a situation where our MPs had joined another political party.
Okay, yeah, you may say that, but if you take the 2022 by-elections as a barometer in which your party, as I said, did not retain any of the recalled seats, what does it say about voter support for the MDCT going into the national harmonized elections this year? In fact, some contend that the MDCT may be, and this is in their words, slaughtered at the polls and will be finished as a political party. Something that they say, if that happens, can be laid squarely at your door. Your comment?
Well, Andy, I think that it is very unfair on the MDC to judge it on the basis of a by-election. This was one of the most apathetic by-elections in history. 22% only went to vote. The majority did not vote. The majority did not vote for one reason or another. So you cannot base the performance of a party on the very apathetic election. And let's face it, at that point in time, in my respectful view, the CCC was a political fad. And you know what political fads are. They are fashionable this minute and they fizzle out. And I think we are being vindicated. But as I said, this is no time to the political strategy is not defined by interim
So
issues.
you don't see the losses in the by-election as a rejection by the Zimbabwean voters?
We see the loss in the by-election as a very motivating factor. Our people have been motivated. We restructured the party, as you saw. Our organizing department, which had gone to sleep, has woken up. Our women, right now, the Women's Assembly of the MDC is doing excellent philanthropic work in the rural areas. We are the only active political party so far. So we don't look at we did not do well in 2022 and therefore the heavens has fallen. No, we are very determined to go ahead and to stage one of the most dramatic political comebacks ever known in the history of this country. It's coming.
Now, I want to touch on something which, during my research, I found popping up every now and then. And this is critics and commentators allege that you are a political stooge for ZANU-PF. They say that your role is to destroy opposition politics in Zimbabwe. In fact, your former chairperson, Morgan Komichi, once said that your party was rejected because people now see it as a ZANU-PF puppet. Of course, first of all, true or false? And further, whatever the case, what are you going to do to shake off that perception, that tag?
Well, in the opposition circles, whenever somebody disagrees with you, the label that they are ZANU-PF is a weapon of choice. Welshman Ncube split from Morgan Tsvangirai in 2005. He was called an appendage of ZANU-PF. In fact, he was called CIO. Tendai Biti split in 2014 and formed an outfit at Mandela. He was called a stooge of ZANU-PF and a puppet of ZANU-PF and a member of the Central Intelligence Organization. And these accusations have been leveled on a lot of political leaders, including Advocate Nelson Chamisa himself. There were allegations that he had dealings with Robert Mugabe, Gushungo Dairy, and so on. I don't know whether that's true or false, but this is a weapon of choice. This is how, because people know that within the opposition circles, people don't like ZANU-PF. So it is false. There is absolutely, and I've challenged my critics, show the world the evidence that I have any dealings with ZANU-PF. But when it comes to other people, I can show you the evidence. I can show you evidence of contracts, business contracts with ZANU-PF people. I can tell you of intimate relationships that some members of the opposition who are critical of me have with ZANU-PF. We simply said we must change the political approach in this country. Gone are the days of the politics of rancor, acrimony, violence. Let's now adopt a new culture of politics, the culture of rational disputation. Because it was a new idea, some people did not take it, some people did not understand it, least of all, my colleagues. Now, my colleagues within the Triple C and the opposition are now joining me in calling for national dialogue in our country. Confrontation does not work anymore. Calling names on your political opponents is now an anachronism. Now we need politics, civilized politics, as they do in other countries. But because it was a new idea, it was resisted. But we are happy that the churches have joined, the members of parliament have joined, other members of the opposition have joined, and other countries, South Africa, the Minister of Foreign Affairs was talking about Zimbabweans, the need for Zimbabweans to find themselves. So we are within message. History has absolved us.
Let's talk about your message, because every political party will have a manifesto or position, a set of core values that they want to go and sell to the electorate. Because as you said, the ideas of intimidation, of slandering each other, those days are over. The electorate want ideas. They want to know from political parties what they will give, and if they're elected, what they will deliver. What is your MDCT core's message?
Well, Andy, it is fair to say that right now as we speak, Zimbabwe is home to some of the unhappiest people in the world. It is our intention to change that. So our aim is to have a Zimbabwe that is peaceful, that is democratic, a Zimbabwe that will transform into the commercial economic hub of the African continent, a Zimbabwe whose development trajectory leaves no one behind, a Zimbabwe that is just, a Zimbabwe that pays attention to the poor and the downtrodden. We are a social democratic party, and we have core values within social democracy: justice, equality, freedom, constitutionalism, solidarity, and the respect of the rule of law. We are going to take Zimbabwe towards the social democratic path because that is the only solution to our social, political, and economic conundrum.
And this will all be spelled out clearly when you release your election manifesto, I assume.
Very, very soon.
When will that be released? Any sneak peek?
Well, what I can tell you is that the team that is working on the election manifesto is almost through. And then it becomes a question of timing as to when we release it. We have traditionally released our manifestos 4 months before the election. So it depends on when the elections are going to be called. But you must watch out, everything remaining constant. You must watch out in March. And to my opponents, I say, beware of the Ides of March.
You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. Our discussion, Battle for Harvest House. Will Mwonzora share the spoils? Now it's time for us to take a breather. After the break, we continue our discussion with the MDCT President, Douglas Mwonzora. Don't go away. The Chase, we'll be right back.
Engithi days etekasi siphila labantu sikhamba labantu sihlala labantu engithi days etekasi agriculture the lifestyle.
There are many days of our lives, but there's nothing ever like a guava. I mean, day at ekas. It's a whole. Sing happy.
Tumbane country park emakwekwe empopoma inkethe lufefe esizinde chabanana tava the culture the lifestyle.
Yes, khona lapha emakhokhoba lo be ngula those emagwekwe
entombane kogugu
because of iphumula okamashobana umzilikazi inkethazibheki baba esizinda baba. My name is Mzo 7 AK Mr. Gaga Gugu. Kulumis Kiwange.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome back. This is The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. Our discussion, Battle for Harvest House. Will Mwonzora share the spoils? And of course, this is ZTN Prime, coming to you live from Harare, Zimbabwe. Douglas, the saying goes that money is the root of all evil, and money, critics say, may well just be at the heart of the alleged troubles at the MDCT. And now here I'm talking about the assets which you went to court and won, Harvest House and the other assets of Shanghai's MDC, if I can call it that. Of course, the money you received under the Political Parties Finance Act is close to 60 million in 2022. And I understand that more funds may have been dispersed to you only in the last 2 weeks, that's in 2023. Some people are of the view that you are now in it for personal gain at the expense of the masses, and that is the reason you are in politics. And frankly, you may just be, according to them, unelectable.
Well, I am not the first political leader of the MDC to receive the government grant, the Political Parties Fund. Morgan Tsvangirai received it, as president. Nelson Chamisa received it. Thokozani Cooper received it. And I have received it. So what makes it so peculiar about me? And by the way, and you may want to know that this political parties fund came as a result of a court case that was argued in 1997. And you may want to know that the main applicant in that case was Bishop Mwonzora, that people in the opposition seek to revile. And the lawyer who argued that case was myself. The lawyer who prepared that case was myself at the age of 27. And frankly speaking, I do not understand, other than issues of jealousy, other than issues of greed, why it should be so peculiar that the leader of the MDC, Douglas Mwonzora, leadership must not receive this money. We are entitled to receive this money. This money is not coming from ZANU-PF. These are state funds disbursed in terms of the Political Parties Finances Act for the political party to run its affairs. Of course, because we are the MDC, we acquired assets over the years. Of course, the CCC is trying to get our assets in Chinoi, in Bulawayo, and so on. But yet they were formed in 2022, well after we had acquired these assets. So I don't understand why they are saying that. So I was in politics, earlier than any of the opposition politicians right now. I am the oldest serving opposition leader, having started in 1988 as a young student at the University of Zimbabwe. I joined the Zimbabwe Unity Movement to fight the one-party state. I was detained in Wawa prison in 1990. I joined the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions instead of joining very, very lucrative multinational companies. I joined the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions because of my conviction. I have been fighting for a new people-driven democratic constitution. That is why I am a founder member of the National Constitutional Assembly. And I rose in the MDC through the ranks, right from treasurer of Nyanga district up to president of the party. And at every stage, Andy, I was being elected. And recently, the people who know me best, in the MDC, had confidence in me because they know I am focused not on the money as the critics say. The money that comes to the party is not mine. I earn money at my law firm, Mwonzora and Associates. At one point in time, I was a lecturer at the University of Zimbabwe. I do write often for international magazines, and I have co-authored a book with other intellectuals. It's called Public Participation Under African Constitutionalism, and I did contribute a chapter on public participation under authoritarian rule. I was a consultant when the Gambia, that country in West Africa, when they were in their transition after they removed their dictator Yahya Jammeh. I was called to be one of the consultants to advise on the transition. So I am in the politics because of conviction. I am in the politics because I think that Zimbabweans deserve better. Zimbabweans, especially the poor and the downtrodden, require and deserve a voice. I want a Zimbabwe that is egalitarian. I want a Zimbabwe that is fair. I want a Zimbabwe whose leadership is based on meritocracy. Right now, it may be very difficult for somebody from Matabeleland to aspire to be president of Zimbabwe because of the ethnic considerations when we choose leaders. We want to get rid of that, and we want leadership determined on the merit. I want to see a better economy. I want to see a Zimbabwe which is not at war with itself. I want to see a corruption-free Zimbabwe. And this is what I am leading my party towards achieving.
I'm glad you mentioned this issue of meritocracy, because your party at the end of 2022, which you said this earlier, held an elective Congress at which you were the sole candidate for president of the MDCT. I mean, the Congress, commentators state, created controversy amid allegations from the then party secretary for programs and party business, Norest Marara, that you violated the constitution by barring him from contesting on the grounds of not being within the MDCT 2014 structures and what he called brazen intimidation of members, and violation of the party's constitution. There were even allegations that you bussed members from Harare to intimidate others. I want you to comment on that, whether it's true or not. And if it was true, would these be signs, in your opinion, of what you call a meritocracy, a democratic leader open to others' views, and also contestation from other people within your party against your own position?
What is important is that Mr. Marara took his case to court, and it was determined by outsiders. He lost the case. But let me just, for the benefit of the public, tell you how the Congress processes went. Before we embark on the selection of candidates, we produce what is called an election template. This election template is produced by the Elections Directorate. The Elections Directorate is chaired by the national chairperson, in this case, Senator Morgan Comich. He produced an election template which he brought to the standing committee, and in that election template, he said, he proposed that the nomination of candidates must be by the National Council, because the National Council is made up of equal number of delegates from each province. So it is a very representative organ. We used it during the Extraordinary Congress in 2020, this exact same forum. And we agreed with that. Of course, I argued that we must put a threshold. For you to be duly nominated, you must score 30% of the National Council. Mr. Marara came in. He was expecting us to disqualify him. And I'm glad that when I addressed the National Council, it was on camera. It was in front of the media, Zimbabwean media. And I said that no one is going to be disqualified. Mr. Marara was not disqualified. When the nomination process came, the person chairing was Morgan Comich. Of course, he was interested as well in leadership. And people nominated, I was nominated, and Comich asked whether there was any other nomination. Mr. Marara was seated there. The person that he had asked to nominate him was dozing because he had fettered him with alcohol at Avondale. That's not my fault. And Mr. Marara did not even nominate himself. And as a result, I was nominated unopposed. That is democracy. Democracy is the dictatorship of the majority. And we then went to the Congress. Of course, I was nominated unopposed. I am not the first leader of the MDC to be nominated unopposed. Morgan Tsvangirai was nominated unopposed in 2014. Nelson Chamisa was nominated unopposed in 2019. And Douglas Mwonzora is nominated unopposed in 2022. What's so wrong with me being nominated unopposed? But we then went to Congress, and Mr. Marara was free to come to Congress. Nobody barred him. He did not even attend. In fact, he chose to hire street kids, paid $2,000 to street kids, 100 street kids to come and disrupt the Congress. But of course, we were able to forestall that. So this is only the speeches by people who have not done well. I have lost elections before, but I have not blamed anyone for it. I have gone back to the drawing board, revised my strategy, and relaunched myself. So this was a democratic Congress. It's not only me who was not elected unopposed. Other people were elected unopposed. Chief Ndlovu, my first vice president, on merit. He is a person who is doing fantastic work in Nkai, philanthropic work for the people of his area. And then we have the second vice president, Paulina Mpariwa, founder member of the MDC, former member of the General Council of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, former Minister of Labor, Labor and Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare in the inclusive government. Very active woman, a very grounded woman. Engineer Mzuri was defeated by Mrs. Mpariwa. And look at Solomon Chikovero, long-serving member of the MDC, driven into exile by the killer gangs of Robert Mugabe, and came back only after Mugabe was gone. Yvonne Msarurwa, the vice chairperson, sentenced to death, sentenced for 20 years for an offense she didn't commit. She went to Chikurubi, and she only came out after, I think, about 4 or 5 years. Her spirit was undaunted, and she continued fighting for change. She is one of the examples of our girl-child policy. She is youth. And right now, she is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Climatic Change, traversing the world, promoting a green a world, and so on. These people were elected on merit.
So are you saying then that because accusations are that you yourself, through your own structures and your own supporters, captured some of the Congress, some of the members of it, to ensure that you were unopposed and that you got that 30% threshold?
How do I do that? Andy, I've never been known for my violence. I am not a violent person.
Well, let's talk about violence,
I
though.
am a person who has punished people who have engaged in violence.
I want to talk about violence because you said earlier that we had a peaceful Congress, it wasn't violent, but actually all reports indicate that there was violence and it reared its ugly head at the Congress. You've just accused your rival or one of your rivals of bussing in or paying youth to do that. However, accusations are pointing at you and your supporters. And I mean, you cannot talk and sit there and talk about a violence-free Zimbabwe if at your own Congress, in your own party, violence is there, can you?
Fortunately, Andy, our Congress was covered live by the press. And some of the journalists who were there are people who have not spoken good about the MDC every time. Blessed Mkhianga was there, just to pick one critic of the party. They were there. Surely we must have videos. Surely we must have pictures of this violence. There was no violence, Andy. It never happened. What happened? Why Mr. Marara
So the press reports were wrong.
There was no violence.
But what about Kupe, who was hurt in 2022, for example?
Yes, Dr. Tozani Kupe was beaten on the 27th of December 2020. And guess what, Andy? The person who beat Dr. Kupe was called Francis Nyamkondiwa from Epworth. I fired him from the party for the violence. I don't condone violence. And can people please tell us, give us an example of the person who was assaulted? This is false because people expected violence at the Congress. It didn't happen because we have an elaborate security system. Mr. Marara, with his $2,000, ended up paying the wrong person. And the street kids refused to obey him. But if you look at the sadness of it all, hiring street kids to cause violence, exploiting the poor and the unfortunate for sordid political gains, for me, that is very unpardonable. Why did he not bring his child? Why bring the children of the down or of the suffering and downtrodden? It is morally reprehensible.
All right, it's time for us to take a breather. Now, after the breather, I'm going to touch on something which appears to become normal in the MDC, and that's suspension, expulsion, and blocking of members. This is The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. Our discussion, Battle for Harvest House. Will Mwonzora share the spoils? Don't go away, The Chase. We'll be right back.
Buckle up and prepare to be taken on a riveting journey, unlocking the very best of Zimbabwe. Architecture and interior design, art and entertainment, people, products, produce, the great outdoors, hidden gems, and so much more. Experience the good life from the comfort of your home. Only on C'est La Vie, Mondays at 6:30 p.m. on ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294.
Welcome back. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. Our discussion, Battle for Harvest House. Will Mwonzora share the spoils? This is Etienne Prime, live from Harare, Zimbabwe. Douglas, I would like to touch on something which appears to become normal, maybe within the MDCT in particular, and that is the suspension, expulsion, and blocking of what critics say are your rivals. I mean, let me just go through the names I picked up in research. Coupe expelled. Marara, according to him, blocked from contesting against you. Komichi apparently blocked or allegedly blocked. And now recently, in fact, only Tuesday, Mudzuri and 7 senior members suspended pending investigations and disciplinary action by your party without really giving a reason why. Now, from an outside perspective, this can be seen as a case of you purging those within your party who hold different views to you, or worse, members perceived as direct challengers to your party presidency or position. So possibly you could expand on the expulsions, why they happened, and also in particular, if you could, the 7 senior members and of course Engineer Mudzuri, who of course was a leader in the opposition.
Andy, what you have just said is ahistorical. In other words, it's not the expulsions, suspensions are not a phenomenon peculiar to the MDC. ZANU-PF expelled Edgar Tekere. I'm sure you know that. And in 1990...
No, we're not talking ZANU-PF, we're talking you, sir.
In 1990, Edgar Tekere, in 1991, Edgar Tekere expelled Dr. Magoche, Masipula Stole, and so on. And coming to Morgan Tsvangirai, he expelled Tendai Biti, Walshman Ngube, and company. And when it came to Nelson Chamisa, he expelled Thokozani Coupe. When it came to the People First, Mujuru's party, Maim Juru's party, they expelled people there. And in the Triple C, we know that there are people who have been expelled.
All right, so you've told me what others have done. How about you?
It's not something peculiar to the MDC. That's the point I'm trying to make to you. Such that there is no need for our members to panic that the MDC is now in turmoil. The MDC is a party which has a constitution, unlike some political parties. It has a constitution, and this constitution constitutes what we call rules of the club. And these rules of the club prescribe certain behavior, proscribe certain behaviors as well. For example, if you get involved in violence or planning violence, let alone using the poor kids, street kids, to cause mayhem at a Congress, can you imagine what could have happened had that plan succeeded? And in that Congress, we had old women, we have the disabled, we have people in a confined area, and we have the street kids coming in. They had been fettered with alcohol, and they could have themselves gotten injured. So we could have had injuries, even deaths. How do people plan that? And I, as a political leader, why should I tolerate that? We, as a party, we always say ZANU-PF must never be violent. We don't want political violence. How do we enforce that if charity doesn't begin at home?
But
there are 2 offenses.
Yeah, please, continue.
There are 2 offenses, and that I have not tolerated as a leader, peculiarly as a leader of the MDC. Corruption. I have expelled people from the party for corruption. I have expelled people from the party for violence. And right now, there are allegations of violence among some of these 7. And
is this the core reason, Mudzuri and the 7? Can you tell us the core reason why?
Well, I don't want to convert this in a public trial for these people, because they were not expelled.
But there are accusations, though, correct? I mean, you suspended them publicly. Surely there must be charges.
Sure.
Can you tell us?
Sure. The charges range from violence and planning violence, number 1. Taking the party to court, number 2. And there is a resolution of the standing of the National Council that if you take the party to court, you have expelled yourself. Use domestic remedies. Number 3, colluding with forces which are hostile to the MDC. And you will be interested to note that some of these forces are in the opposition, some of these forces are in government. And some of these people were colluding with these people. And number four, attempting to circumvent a democratic process. We have had a Congress, and you have not made it, and you want to reverse that. We have domestic remedies. And of course, planning a split of the party, and some of them planning to form another political party. Why should we wait for the day of reckoning? This party is self-preserving. And what we did is we suspended them. Because they are public figures, we advise the public. And we have said to them they will appear before the disciplinary committee. If they are innocent, and we are too happy to reinstate them to their positions. But we must be a party of rules, and we must never allow a situation where people use violence and incite other people's children and endanger the lives of other people's children.
But it appears that you're creating one, enemies, and two, you're almost fostering a sense of the MDC again splitting once more doing this, because you're talking senior party officials, you're talking NJ Mwonzora, of course, who's
he
a
is
well-known
not
opposition.
A senior party official.
Well, he's a senior. I mean,
he is a former vice president. We now have a vice president who is there. But that is not to say that he is not important. He is important. Just like in Dynamos, Moses Chunga was a very important player. But what will happen to Moses Chunga if he did not turn up for practice? He would not play on Sunday, would he? So we have rules which these leaders must know better. And there are many things, because I don't want to convert this into a public trial, because it will not be it will be unfair to them.
Because you have your processes.
Yes, we have the processes, and we have invited them to come to appear before the disciplinary committee and answer to their charges. And the Constitution says the president can suspend. And why now? You see, people are saying that I'm consolidating my power, I am removing political opponents. No, I allowed them to participate in the Congress. I beat them. They are defeated people. And why should I pursue defeated people unless they are also breaching the Constitution? These are rules of the club.
So you're not worried that I mean, we're only a few months to the election, really, and we're in election mode already. You're not worried that your party will split again. I mean, surely that cannot be a good electoral strategy.
Shakespeare said, cut this festered joint and the rest sound. And what that meant is that if you have a cancer, it may spread throughout the body. You may have to cut it. And what we have to do as a leadership, in some instances, is to be cruel, to be kind. I have a party to preserve. I have a party to defend. I have a constitution of the party that I am enjoined, and I am obliged to defend. And my colleagues know that I'm not a harsh leader. They know that I have called them and warned them time without number. No rest, Marara took us to court. He lost. I did not punish it. I did not touch him. We went to Congress. He lost. But if you then organize street kids, why should I let you be? And I am saying, Andy, other political leaders, President Mnangagwa, Advocate Chamisa, must follow my example and punish their kith and kin who get involved in violence.
Would some say you're paranoid? I mean, are you seeing enemies around every corner, every rock? Or what is this? Because it appears that everyone's against you. You're the one who's right. Therefore, let's punish them and get them out of my party.
No. Andy, that is not fair, because we are talking about 7 officials in a party of 560,000, or let's say in a leadership of the National Council of 211. Surely, if I'm advancing the cause of the majority, it's not paranoia. It's not paranoia to follow the rules of your board rules. The rules of your club, and so on. It's not paranoia. But I was saying, Look at the video, I hope you have seen it, of people being assaulted in Mrewa. Obviously, the assailants belong to a political party. And the leaders of those political parties must punish their members who get involved in violence. It so happens that I'm the only political leader in this country who does that. And I'm very proud of myself because we want to get rid of violence in this country. We want to get rid of violence in the MDC. That is why Dr. Kupe was not the best of my friends, but when she was beaten, I went to punish the person who did it. Of course, they are now in the same party with that person. That's their choice.
I'd like to ask you a hypothetical question, and it's an interesting question that I thought of when I was putting this together. Given a choice, would you prefer to work with the current state president and member, of course, of the ruling party, ZANU-PF, Dr. Idi Mnangagwa, or the main opposition party, Triple C, led by Advocate Nelson Chamisa?
I don't see how that question should arise, Andy. Directly or indirectly, I am working with President Mnangagwa in Parliament because we are represented in Parliament.
But who are you ideologically more bent towards? I mean, it's an interesting question because ZANU-PF could win. ZANU-PF could win the next election, for example. Chamisa could win the next election. I'm just putting hypotheticals, of course.
Andy, I think it is fair for me to complete that sentence.
Please.
Directly or indirectly, we are working with President Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF in Parliament. Just a few days ago, we were in the same ad hoc committee. Directly or indirectly, we are working with Triple C in Parliament. And in the group that is called the High Level Political Parties Platform. And this High Level Political Parties Platform is a dialogue platform comprising of the Triple C, ZANU-PF, and MDCT. So we are working together. Of course, it's a low key.
What about individuals?
Now,
fine, we talk parties. That's I understand. What about individuals? Dr. Mnangagwa.
I am not a friend of President Mnangagwa, a personal friend of President Mnangagwa. I am not a personal friend of Nelson Chamisa. For me, they are the same. They share one common thing. They are Zimbabweans. They are my brothers. And I'm prepared to work with both of them.
But I mean, let's talk about your relationship with Advocate Nelson Chamisa. I recall you beat him as SG of MDCT when Morgan Tsvangirai, may his soul rest in peace, was alive. And then commentators contend that you became then sworn enemies. Have you and Chamisa tried to bury the hatchet? Have either of you reached out to each other as personal leaders and, of course, looking at your parties and looking at the opposition taking on a ruling party?
Well, my own view as Douglas is that when we go to internal party contests, it's not a matter of life and death, Andy. One day you win, the next day I win, and so on. Yes, in 2014, we had a very bitter fight, if I may call it that, which I won. And it was, I think, because we both realized that whoever became the Secretary General was likely to be the next president of the party. So it may have been unfair to the supporters because they thought this was a simple fight between people who want to be general secretaries. But I went on after Morgan Tsvangirai promoted Nelson Chamisa to be vice president. I went on to serve under him. I even went on to serve under him during the election. I was the Secretary General and I was administering his campaign. And he did objectively very well in 2018. And I also won at my level in Manicaland as senator. We collaborated well because I understand authority. He was my senior and I was his junior. The fairness of his rise from the person I had defeated to being promoted, notwithstanding. Whether it was fair or not is a question of another story. Yeah. But I am never personal. My relationship with him, my disagreement with him is not personal.
So do you have communications? Do you speak with each other as leader to leader of opposition parties? Are you like completely not interested in speaking to each other? What is your position?
We have not spoken to each other for a very long time. But Andy, I did try. And we met at a funeral of one of the senators, Senator Java, Passion Java's mother. She was a senator with us. And she sadly passed on, I think it was 2021 or 2020, 2021, somewhere there. And we were given chance to speak. And in my speech, I said, addressing him directly in front of the mourners, that my brother Nelson, we have a responsibility of resolving the Zimbabwean problem together. We have a responsibility to unite the people of Zimbabwe, end of quote. And I thought I was reaching to my brother. The following day, Advocate Mahere, Jameson Timber were calling on me to have my head examined. That they don't, Advocate Chamisa doesn't speak to a sellout, doesn't speak to a Muzorewa. They call me Muzorewa because I come from Manicaland, where Muzorewa comes from. And that is a tribal slayer. But anyway, and Advocate Chamisa himself went on to write a rambling article against me. So I tried, I reached out. What their attitude towards me is up to them. Hopo Chingono yesterday was lying to the nation that in the parliament I had said that Zimbabwe must defer elections. I was not in parliament yesterday. I sit in the Senate. The Senate has since adjourned. The house that was sitting yesterday was the National Assembly. So that misrepresentation, calculated to bring feelings of ill will against a person, is what I receive from them.
Right, now then, I've just got a few minutes left, but I just have a couple of questions more for you, Douglas. First of all, $40,000 for a car and a stand that obviously has been offered to all members of parliament. What is your party's position on that? Are you condoning your MPs to take it, the stand or the car? Are you against it, like some people apparently in the Triple C are doing? What is your position?
Well, sorry, Andy, to take you back, in the GNU, during the GNU, some people were ministers. They took loans. They took farms. They were given Mercedes-Benz and other Porsche cars. They accepted. And it is so ironic that their MPs who have been given 40,000 are then ordered to return the 40,000 when other people received as high as 600,000.
I'm sorry to jump in, but I do want to ask
unfair.
you two more questions. So you are okay with your party members, the people who are in the members' party, taking the 40,000?
Our position, Andy, is that civil servants, all civil servants, including members of parliament, must be entitled to a housing allowance. It may differ with the grades, but we are advocating as a Labour-backed party that this facility must be available to members of parliament as well as to other civil servants.
So just a quick one. You mentioned the $600,000 loan in GNU. Who got that?
Well, he is not here to defend himself, but and I
So this is allegations.
I don't think it's fair that I should mention his name, but he is there.
All right, so
he is in the Triple C.
He's in the Triple C, and someone in the Triple C position. You're not going to give me anything.
Andy, you are trying your luck too much.
Right now, of course, you are president of the MDCT for interest's sake. Will you be contesting for the state president position in the 2023 national harmonized elections in Zimbabwe?
Of course, Andy, I am going to contest for the presidency of Zimbabwe come the election time.
So technically, you're announcing your candidacy right here on Zetty and Friday.
I'm certainly contesting, not with an intention to accompany others, but with an intention to win. We are going to garner 66% of the presidential vote. And that is what 66%
compared to 2018?
Record it. 66% is what we are garnering.
And this figure is coming from where? Your own internal research? Where is this coming from, 66%?
Well, it is coming from a number of postulations that my research team has done. I asked them to do a research on the political strategy, and should that strategy work, and that's a critical assumption as well, should that strategy work, it should generate such a vote.
So you believe at the National Harmonized Election 2023, you believe that you can and will win the presidency and become president of the Republic of Zimbabwe?
I will win, Andy.
We have come to the end of the chase this evening, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. But before I wind up, I'll give you one more minute. I'd like you to speak directly to your supporters, but also to Zimbabwe's registered voters. You have about a minute. What would you say to them right now?
The people of Zimbabwe, we are now at a crucial time when we must make decisions on who should govern us. We want a Zimbabwe that is peaceful, democratic, a Zimbabwe that is prosperous, a Zimbabwe that is a land of happy people, a Zimbabwe that understands that the youth are not leaders of tomorrow but the leaders of today, a Zimbabwe that respects its women and their rights, a Zimbabwe that respects the rights of the poor and the downtrodden, the rights of the disabled. We are going to make this country a better place. And we have said as the MDC that there should be no violence. This is the time to change the politics of our land. Gone are the days of the politics of ranga, acrimony, violence. Now is the time for politics of rational disputation and tolerance. Thank you.
On that note, you have come to the end of the chase this evening. Of course, you have been watching Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. And of course, our discussion, Battle for Harvest House. Will Mwonzora share the spoils? I'd like to thank my guest this evening, MDCT President Douglas Mwonzora. Douglas, thank you for appearing on The Chase. Now, of course, we are on the election fever as we know it. So every Thursday here on The Chase, we have an election series. So be tuned every Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Central African time, live on ZTM Prime. I, of course, are going to see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, from 6 to 8 a.m. on Morning Rush, the only show that you should wake up to. Douglas, thank you once again for appearing on The Chase.
Thank you.
I'm Andy Hodges. Have a good evening, good night, and please, you all be safe.